Freddie. So when you write you're a Marxist. I think
Mm,
I looked forward to our conversation. I said we're going to have a lot to disagree about, and then
mm,
we talk and we don't. Our worldviews are not that incompatible. I think we talk about cost disease. I see you believe in markets. I see you're okay with billionaires, and I know you've written about the term Marxist and why you're attached to it. So can you
mm.
talk about that a little bit? Because I think of
Yeah,
Marxist, I think of you need the central planning. To me, that's central. I haven't read nearly as much Marxist theory as you, so I know what I'm talking about. But I think in terms of central planning, and I think of forced equality. So can you
yeah.
say what Marxism means to you, and sort of the
Sure,
choice to stick with that label?
sure. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Like central planning is central to Marxism. Um, uh, I don't think that there's any point in talking about that because a Marxist revolution is not in the offing, right? But I also think it's important to say that, like, yes, central planning is central to the Marxist discourse, but I think it's important to say. So, I mean, part of the problem is just that most people who read Marx and talk about Marx don't understand Marx. The first thing to say is Marx said very little that was sort of specific and descriptive about the post-revolutionary period, and he in fact said several times that that was by design. In other words, he didn't want to be too uh, uh, to be too prescriptive because he acknowledged that he didn't know what would happen. So the fundamental thing is, like, the core of Marxism is the notion of surplus value, the rate of exploitation, and the decline in the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. So in other words, Marx says. There's this thing called the labor theory of value. It long predates Marx. Adam Smith talked about it. People have talked about it both from conservative and left perspectives economically. It's the idea that if you're trying to figure out where profit comes from, right? Because capitalism is a series of exchange. I have this pen; it costs me $1. I give it to you. I charge 150, whatever. Where does that profit come from? If somewhere in the system there has to be some sort of a sense of things have values that can be assigned. The Marxist answer, and the answer for other people, I think Ricardo as well, is from labor. Right, and so Marx's observation is that, well, it's the workers are being paid X wage, but the capitalists are selling what they produce for more than it costs him for them to make it. Then the surplus value is being captured by the capitalist when it's being made by the worker, and that's exploitation, and that's the center of all of it. Right, and in fact, Marx said his only contribution to socialism was exactly in this thing. It's a nerdy economic theory. It has nothing to do with listening to Rage Against the Machine. It has very little to do with being Cuban and wanting to overthrow Batista. Right. Um, that that theory, of course, is highly criticized. Many people reject it. They said that it doesn't reflect things. It's also very much dependent upon, again, like the perspective of a guy who was looking at 19th century UK and places where people went to factories and they just literally made things. And you could say, okay, here's this widget. We produced it. The laborers only got X pounds. The capitalist sells it for Y pounds. That's exploitation. It's become much more difficult. You look at someone like me, right? I sell a newsletter. I'm my only employee. Am I a capitalist or am I a member of the proletariat? You can certainly make the argument that that stuff breaks down.
Mhm.
But at the center of that is a vision of sort of an economic theory that is Marxism. It is certainly associated with a command economy. To the degree that he defined anything, I mean, Marx's vision is sort of I mean, it is called communism, and it's decentralized, autonomous bands of people who are free to enter or exit. So you can go someplace else if you don't like your particular commune, your particular band, where everybody contributes according to what they're good at, everybody receives what they need, and where everything is led by direct democracy. Obviously, that doesn't have a lot to do with the Soviet Union or China or Vietnam or anywhere else. That's not going to happen anytime soon, right? So, because it's not going to happen, I would like to remain informed by the Marxist principles that I've come up with, and I still believe them in an abstract sense. But it's like having a strong moral prescription on what we're going to do when we colonize Mars. It's still so far off that it's not useful for me in a day-to-day way of trying to navigate the world. Let's say Alpha Centauri instead of Mars, maybe. But I want to remain informed by it. The problem is like, as I said, a lot of people don't understand what communism is. I mean, I wrote I wrote in a piece not that long ago, Marxism has nothing to do with equality. Right? Is one of the fundamental misunderstandings. Like Marxism is an engine to create equality. It's not only is it not true, it was directly refuted by both Marx and Engels independently. They both said it's a nonsensical goal because anything can be evaluated on so many different criteria that you can never sort of decide what is and is not equal. And what they wanted was an end to exploitation, right? And that's the center of it. But
So wait,
unfortunately,
do you have a theory as to why all these countries and all these people who call themselves Marxists got it so wrong? Because these people, people like Lenin and people like Stalin, they read a lot of Marx and Engels and they talked about it a lot. And you're saying that they were completely out to lunch. They totally misunderstood them. So what do you think happened there?
what happens is that, and again, I think that this is all strong fodder for a critique that says that Marxism is just it requires too much for it to ever to exist, the communist revolution to ever happen, and therefore it's not realistic. I think that's a good critique. But what happened is that, so one thing that's central to Marxism is you can't have what's called state capitalism. State capitalism is just what the Soviet Union was, which is that you still maintain a system in which you have some sort of currency exchange and in which different people are exchanging things based on a certain apportionment of value that is determined by a top-down authority. That's just capitalism under a different name, right? And it just permits sort of more sort of bad faith actors to enter into the system and to be corrupt, which is exactly what the Soviet Union was. So that's one thing. But the problem is if you get rid of that, the alternatives are so out there and they're so divorced from the current way that human setups exist that it becomes essentially impossible to put into place. So therefore, China is a state capitalist, or was a state capitalist anyway, system, and the USSR is a state capitalist system. The other thing is that you can't have socialism in one country. Right, the revolution has to be this cascading workers' revolution that proceeds all around the world, because central to the system is I said that you have this right of exit when you were inside your particular little band, right? But if you've just sort of taken over one country, number one, you're going to be deprived of all of the things that you need to be able to live a modern life, because no one country has access to all the resources and expertise that you need. But also, you don't have that right of exit, right? If you look around, you're like, wow, Cambodia is a shit place to live. I'm in this, Marxist paradise. I want to go over to this other place. You can't do it if it's only happening in one country. So I think the reason why people have become bad Marxists is because they are confronted with the constraints of prerequisites that are so out there that they can't possibly be met in anything realistic time frame. So they begin to bend the theory in all manner of ways, in a way to sort of fit what their situation is, which is what Leninism is. Right. I mean, the whole Bolshevik thing. I have a lot of respect for aspects of the Bolshevik revolution, but Lenin's writings and also Trotsky's to a large extent are sort of grappling with the fact that, okay, we can't do what we're saying we want to do. What do we do instead? And that's how you end up with people thinking that the point is equality, because equality seems like a much more sort of achievable goal within a little bubble of a communist country that can't possibly do what Marx said they should do.